when you're making value-based decisions is you have to consider the impact of your decision on other people. I mean, at our core, everybody, we all say, right, love God and love people. That is the greatest commandment. And so if you're going to love people well, then you have to consider the impact of your decisions on other people.
What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Futures Here podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Nixon. Of course, I'm here with my co-host, Robert Aboitis.
Yes, sir.
Today, we are talking about the process of decision making. All leaders have to make decisions. But recently, I've just seen in the news and in other places, bad decisions. And when you make bad decision after bad decision, they will catch up with you and it'll come to light. And so we want to make sure that you as a leader make good decisions. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And how you and I make decisions, but also just kind of a process for you on how to make decisions that are based on your values, that are based on where you're heading, that are based on how God's made you. So that's what we're getting into today. So Robert, in just real quick, how do you even make decisions? Is there a process that you go through?
I try not to make decisions every day. I try to just let things happen. Yeah, I do go through a process. I think this is one of those areas where I don't know how many leaders actually know the process they go through to make decisions.
Right.
At its most basic form, it's a pros and cons kind of thing.
Yeah.
But for me, really, the decision process involves looking at always three things, right? How much time is this going to take me? How much energy is it going to take me? And then ultimately, what is the cost of all of this?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
because for me, cost is really important in the decisions that I make. And I'm not talking about financial costs. I'm talking about cost to my health, cost to my family, right? Cost to whatever it is that I'm, maybe even cost to my organization, right? So all of those decisions, I try to just kind of look at those three things. Well, how much time is this going to take? How much energy is it going to take? And then what's the cost ultimately of that?
That's really good. Because I think a lot of leaders don't ever think about those things.
Yeah.
It's just like, I've got to accomplish this. We got to get here. So at whatever cost, and you use up people, you use up your energy, you sacrifice your family for that stuff. Like, no one thought through the decision-making process. I've seen so many churches specifically make terrible decisions. And you get outside of the environment, or you're looking from the outside in, and you're like, why would they ever make that decision that way? And so we want to make sure that you guys as leaders have some frameworks, kind of some big rocks to how do you make better decisions. So the first one that we put down today is your decisions should be future oriented.
Yes.
Meaning that you can't just go, you have a phrase that you use here, do you want pain now or pain later? And we always want pain now. Like,
we always defer pain.
Yeah.
Because pain later is always worse.
Yeah.
That's what I used to tell my kid all the time. You take the pain now or you take the pain later, and the pain later is always worse.
And so take care of it now while it's this size problem.
Yeah.
Because what I do find, a lot of people decisions, to even your point on, here are the three things I think about when I'm making decisions. But if you just don't deal with it now, you push it off, and then it becomes a huge problem. And I see that over and over again. And that huge problem can actually topple the thing that God wanted to do through you. It can mess up the institution or whatever it is that you're leading towards the vision and mission that God's given you. So really important. So when we say future oriented, your decisions now should be rooted and anchored to, we're trying to get here. Yeah. What's going to help us get here? And even if it's going to take more work in the now to deal with it, to get here, it's always better to do that.
Yeah, now you're talking about big decisions, right?
Oh, yeah.
Big organizational decisions. Yeah. Obviously, there are a lot of sort of daily decisions that we make that don't have that kind of impact. But yes, in terms of large organizational decisions, they definitely should be futuristic. If you are making decisions about, hey, what are we going to do next week? And next week's going to be great if we make this decision. And it doesn't move you any closer to whatever future you have in mind, then you're just going to constantly stay in that cycle of, again, activity and programs and events where you're just literally trying to get to the next week and make it a great week.
Okay, so I mean, you say all that, and I think about almost every church I've ever known.
Yeah,
because that the calendar is based, and the activities is based, and the movement is based, and the decisions are based on what? The very next event, which is
next thing,
every Sunday, or as we're going into, right? It's the fall. We're about to move into all the holidays, right? And it's not. A lot of times I see churches and leaders and nonprofits as well, like make these decisions based on just what's next.
Yeah.
But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, hey, this big production we're doing for Christmas, is that connected to your overall vision statement? You know?
Right.
And usually you can make it connect, but not really. So then if you just think about, so we just got to go bigger and bigger every year?
Yeah.
At what cost?
Well, I don't know if you noticed, at least in my decision matrix or my decision triangle, what I didn't have in there was value.
Mm-hmm.
I did not think about, well, what's the value of this decision, right? What are the benefits of that decision? And the reason is because we can convince ourselves of value very easily.
Oh yeah.
In fact, I think most leaders would say, oh, well, of course it's the right decision because look at what we're getting out of it.
Yeah.
Right? Regardless of the time it takes,
Yep.
the energy it takes, and the cost that it takes to do that. Because the value is just so clear to them that how could you not make that decision?
Right.
Whereas I think there are times where, there might be a great value in it, but that doesn't mean you should do it necessarily.
Right.
So you have to consider those things because, again, I think the value speaks for itself most of the time. And if you're having to convince yourself, this is a good sign that you're probably not future oriented, is if you're having to convince yourself that this thing is going to actually move you towards your future, it's probably not.
That's good, man. So one of the ways, okay, when you're making big decisions, future oriented. The second you kind of brought up right now is it should be value based.
Yeah.
Like your decisions should actually match up with your stated values.
Yes.
That's connected to your vision and your mission. But those values are the guardrails that keep you moving in the right direction. And so often, and you and I do this in our strategic storyline process with people, values are usually come up with and then never looked at again.
Yeah, that's typical.
And so our values actually have to be played out in the decisions we make. Hey, we don't do that because in our value, we're distinctly urban.
Right.
Okay, so then why are we doing, if we're doing all these events or we're doing these things and it has a suburban feel to it, or it's to the audience that's suburban, somebody in that room needs to go, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
They have to challenge the values that we're doing. And so those decisions should be challenged and then either not made or unmade because it doesn't fit our value set.
Yeah. I mean, I think the value conversation that we have with leaders all the time is it's both an internal and external. The same value works both internally and externally. So one of the things when you're making value-based decisions is you have to consider the impact of your decision on other people. I mean, at our core, we all say, right, love God and love people. That is the greatest commandment. And so if you're going to love people well, then you have to consider the impact of your decisions on other people. And I think too often we are assuming that we know what's best for everybody else. And so we make decisions that, of course, this is going to be great because everyone's going to love it. And look, it's going to be awesome. And then, week after week after week, you're making the decision based on that perceived value, but you're not considering what you're doing to your people, that you're burning them out, that you're killing them, that you're sucking the life out of their ministry, really, because they're just kind of moving to the next thing all of the time.
No, that's good, man. So first, future-oriented. Second, value-based, right? That these decisions should be made based on your values. Those are the guardrails that keep you moving towards your vision and mission. Next, I would say, you mentioned this, your decision-making should be data-driven. And so can you give this example? We used to, at Urban Youth Workers Institute, we created something called the Discipleship Toolkit. That's a number of years ago, and then we did a tour.
Yeah.
Right. And we did this tour, and we did it all, and it was great. And people, they experienced God, and they got loved on. It was awesome, right? But you brought up something on the data because we tried it out, right?
Sure.
Remember in the last episode we talked about the there here path and the act, learn, adjust, right? So we acted, we learned from it, right? And we needed to adjust. Can you share a little bit about that? Like what you discovered from that?
I mean, I think and here's what I'm saying about, we sometimes convince ourselves of the value, right? We had a product that we believed in, right?
Yeah,
the discipleship
absolutely.
toolkit, we believed in it. We would hear the stories of how well that worked and how it was just changing lives, because we were, for the first time, leaders seemed to be engaging in actual conversations with their youth centered around Jesus. So awesome, right? Incredible. Yeah. But we were having trouble getting the word out. And so the idea was, well, let's just go on a 10-city tour where we're just really promoting this app. Really, it was an app that we had, or this series. And so we did that. We were like, okay. And when we ended that 10-city tour, and we were only averaging about 100 people a city that were come out for it. So the idea was, well, if we can just get out in front of enough people, we'll be able to tell them personally how great this tool is,
right,
and they'll begin to use it. Well, once we actually did the data analysis on it, so you're like, okay, we reached 1,000 people in 10 cities, and we looked at how many app downloads we had and how many people were using it. And the reality was, it wasn't 1,000. It wasn't even the 1,000 that we reached.
Wow.
And so when I started looking at the cost of the tour, and John Park in our office, we did this analysis. We started looking at the cost of the tour versus the value that we got out of it. We realized that it costs us $150 per leader to get them to use the app.
Yeah.
And what struck me about that is, it may not seem like a lot of money, but I'm like, I probably could have given each leader $50 and just said, hey, can you use this app? And we would have had 3 times as many leaders just by giving them $50 each.
Yep.
Right? We'll give you $50 to use this and tell us how it is. But instead, we went on this whole tour thing where we did, again, spent $150 per leader on it, and just didn't get the value that we thought we did. Again, didn't consider time, cost, and energy.
And so this is huge, friends. The data-driven decision making is massive, and those have to be, again, it has to be linked to the future orientation of where are we trying to get to, our vision and our mission. Our vision, how are we going to get there? Our mission, is that value based? What's going to keep our mission, on the right road towards our vision? And then how do you actually know? Right now on my truck, I filled it up, and I'm testing out, like, how many gallons to, how many miles to a gallon do I actually get? And it's pretty bad. It's like 11.2. It's, it's an old truck.
That's a big truck too.
Yeah, it's
like
truck.
Driving a house. Bro.
It is, man. So I want to know, right? Because then I can budget off of that.
Yeah.
I find that a lot of institutions don't get deep in that, or leaders get offended by people asking the questions. Hey, why are we doing this big event? What is it actually doing? Oh, well, then we'll spiritualize it. The Lord's being glorified and stuff. Like, how's he being glorified? Is that what we're trying to do? Do we feel like God's not being glorified enough? So is that what we're trying to measure? Right? And so, but these conversations should be had so that we actually steward things better, that we actually reach the thing that we're trying to do. This actually brings your people more on board. Wow, we did that. And it's okay if you make a decision, you fail, as long as you learn from it.
Yeah.
Right? That's okay.
I think we do have to be careful about spiritualizing failure.
Oh man.
Because, and we'll probably get some hate for this, but the thing I hear the most about a failed gathering, event, whatever you want, right? Not as many people showed up, is like, oh, well, the people that needed to be there, like the Lord brought the people that needed to be there. And we use that as a way of saying, see, we can do it again because it was valuable.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, yeah, you know what, that really didn't work. Thank God that those people who did showed up, and I hope it blessed them. But we're not doing that again, because the cost, energy, and time that it took to actually get that, the value just wasn't there.
Right. And it's the same thing, we did this tour, 10-city tour. I'm not coming down on that. We learned a ton from that. That was great. People were blessed. People did use the D kit, all that. But when you broke it down, you go, dude, we could have 3 times. 3,000 people. If we would have just been like, I'll give you $50.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, shoot.
Test it out.
Now but again, what that does though, it forces you to go, what problem are we trying to solve?
Mm-hmm.
And that helps you actually make these better decisions, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're doing that data-driven decision making, which takes it takes effort. You got to be really clear about what you do. And so often, especially right now, especially in the church, because everything has changed, we're still going back to old things. And you need to make room to have these type of conversations to make better decisions.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of times when you hear this, you think, oh, I'm not going to do something unless the data supports it. I would say that's really hard unless you're a big organization who can do a lot of research, right? That's not what we're saying. I think well, I won't speak for you, Tommy. What I'm saying on this piece is we won't do it again if the data doesn't support it.
Yeah, and two, you can, as you're pacing your growing institution, organization, whatever you're leading, you're just at certain levels. I can't do crazy amounts of research and spend all this money so that I can figure this out. We're not at that place, right? Yeah. We're a $1.5 million org right now. We're growing. We are doing more testing and data-driven analysis, but I
sometimes you have to try something out and that didn't work.
And it didn't work. And that's like, hear me say that's okay. What I'm pressing on is that the conversations aren't happening. Right. Everybody just goes, oh, well, pastor said this, or, the CEO said this, or you have to create a space where people can speak into it, where you're getting a different understanding, and so you can make better decisions, which leads us to the next area to make better decisions is be consensus driven. Mm-hmm. Like if you're, as a leader, if you're not gaining and asking the questions and asking people to speak into the decisions that you're making, you're missing out on the gift and the perspective of everybody else.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we had a whole episode on consensus building. So go check that out if you want to know what that's about. But I think that a lot of times as leaders, we don't invite people into the conversation about it because we're afraid that it's going to look like, oh man, we made a stupid decision.
Yeah.
Like, oh, we did this event and I know it didn't work. I know it was awful, but I'm going to double down on it just because I don't want anybody to think that, oh, that was your idea or whatever the case may be, right? Instead of inviting people in and going, hey, I don't know, what do you think? Did it work? And then, if you get a consensus on the fact that, hey, man, this thing, it really didn't work. Like it did not accomplish what we thought it would accomplish. It cost too much. It was hard. Listen to your people when they're telling you how difficult something is to pull off.
Absolutely.
Because if they're telling you how difficult it was, what they're really saying is, hey, let's not do that again.
Yeah. And here's the consensus input as well also saves you from that. If, not just putting something on and then asking for a consensus afterwards. If you started off with this decision, should we do this? How should we do this? When should we? Like all those kind of things. Bring people in on it early. If it doesn't work, then everybody's like, hey, we tried. And then you as a leader you can take responsibility, right? You can own it, but just go, hey, we all sat in a room together and we thought this would work. It didn't. And that's okay. But let's learn from it. Make a better decision because now you have more data, right? You have more data. Right. You're like, hey, we put this thing on. It cost us $10,000. 25 people showed up. You can do some easy math. There's data there. And you're like, okay, that wasn't working. It took us, 500 hours to get ready for okay, well, so that's okay. And if you're like me, I'm not a detail guy, right? I'm a bottom line kind of guy. Just tell me what, the big things that I need to know. If I didn't have detailed people in those meetings asking the hard questions before we actually launch something, man, I'm going to experience so much more pain from it than I would like, oh, we thought about that. Yeah, you know why? Because so-and-so, that's their gifting. they spoke in on it and they were like, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So it's
and this is
helpful.
also where I think critical thinking for leaders is so important, because you may not have gotten the ROI that you wanted out of that particular thing, right? Whatever decision you made, if the ROI didn't pan out, it's not like we're saying, okay, if the ROI doesn't pan out, just don't do it. What we're saying is, look at the data, and what is the data telling you? It might actually be telling you, oh, you know what? We were almost there. We didn't get what we were looking for, but maybe if we just tweak this, I could actually be. So even the next decision, it helps you make a better decision moving forward. Even if you choose to do that event or that thing, whatever it is, if you choose to do it again, with the data, you can actually make a much more intelligent and informed decision. But it does take some critical thinking, because there are times when, you're going to get all this input from people, this feedback, and you as a leader are going to be left going, wow, that was like 50-50.
Yeah.
So what do we do?
What do we do?
Yeah. And that's where you have to really dig deep as a leader and own whatever decision you make moving forward.
Absolutely. And so then when you get back to that this is a cyclical process, by the way, friends. Then when you get back to that process, again, future oriented, connected to your vision, that's value based, that your mission, how you're going to reach that vision, those guardrails keep you. Is this within our values and what we're trying to do? What's the problem we're trying to solve in that? Does the data, what do we learn from the data? Is this data-driven decision making, with the data that you have?
Sure.
That you get people consensus, that they're speaking in on it early, they speak on it afterwards, here's a big one that we do here all the time is you review it.
Yeah.
Like after the thing, we always get together and go,
we have a whole process for
what was good about that, what was bad, what was confusing, what was, what needs to die. Like there's a grid that we use for that to go, was that good? Did it get us what we wanted? And we make a lot of decisions based off of that, right?
Yeah.
So once you have that consensus, you still have the responsibility as the leader, and then you make better decisions. One of the last thing for me is you got to be okay with failing in this. Like, no one asked you as a leader to be perfect. In fact, your leadership, when you do it the way that we're outlining, people start to trust you more. And when they know that it's okay if they make a mistake, they're much more free to actually share what they really think. You make a safe space for people. You make better decisions together. You make it safe for them because you own it if it doesn't go well, right? But they were there too. And we all learn from it. And it takes people a long time, especially if they've been in toxic spaces. It takes them a long time to trust you. Like, okay, you're not going to yell at me. I'm not going to get fired. I'm not, right? Now, my problem is if you continue to make the same mistake, then I'm like, you're not learning. We're not learning. That's a different conversation. So.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things for me in being okay, like with failure, right? As long as you learn, is you have to learn to manage your emotions as a leader. Like I know failure doesn't feel good. I know that if you put all this energy to something and it just doesn't quite work, you're just like, oh my goodness, I just wasted all that time, all that energy, right? All that cost, and it didn't pan out. I think that's just life, man. I think you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I think, you can't control every single outcome. My life with my son has always been baseball, right? And so one of the things that we always talked about is, hey, there's only so much that you can control about, for example, your at bat, right?
Yeah.
You can control where you stand in the box. You can control how you swing. You can control what you're looking at. There's all these things you can control. The minute you put the bat to the ball, you've lost control. You can't push, you can't necessarily move the ball in a specific direction. You don't know how it's going to hop. You don't know if the wind's going to hit it. You don't know if the guy's going to make an amazing catch. Like, there's so much you can't control after you make contact with the ball, and you just have to be okay with it. But if the hitters who have trouble are the ones who are getting out too much, and they are just basically constantly worrying about that.
Yeah.
Worrying about what happened after they hit the ball instead of worrying about and just staying consistent in how you approach the at-bat itself. And I think from a leadership perspective, that's part of it, right? Is there's so much that you can't control that you can't get emotional about the things you can't control.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You gotta let them go.
And when you don't have to carry all that as a leader, yeah, you have the responsibility. But when you invite other people in on that, that's a team effort. Right. Yeah. And then you can celebrate that as a team, right? And you can learn from it as a team.
Yeah.
But that failure isn't like, oh man, you can't just be all, yeah, I love that analogy. You can't be that batter that's like just mad because the guy jumped up and took the home run from him. It's like, that's an amazing play.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, yeah. So learn from it, right? Work on your swing. Like do the things that you can do, right? As you plan out these things and the things that you're going to do next. So friends, I hope this has been helpful for you guys as you make decisions, right? Because we need you to make better decisions, right?
Oh, I mean, please.
Yeah, please do, right? And if you can take some of these, some of these frameworks and start doing this, I will guarantee it'll help your team. You'll reach your vision and mission faster and better. And all the way around, the kingdom of God will be better if we make some better decisions. So we hope that's helpful to you guys, man. Thanks for joining us on The Future is Here. We'll see you guys next time.